how you navigate those first few years of marriage really matter because you're either going to create more attachment injury or
Um,
create security and safety, for a
sure.
lifelong successful marriage.
Welcome back to Trauma Talks with Krystal Booth, the podcast for people who have tried everything to heal their trauma and they want real solutions so that they can get on with their lives. Whether you are in the healing arts or in need of healing, this podcast is for you. Today's guest, we have an aspiring guest with us, Nancy Kung, a licensed marriage and family therapist who has been practicing for nearly 25 years in St. Charles, Illinois. Nancy brings a wealth of experience and personal insight to her work, helping individuals and couples develop more satisfying and engaging relationships. With a background shaped by her own family experiences and extensive training, Nancy is dedicated to building her clients through their struggles and towards emotional health. In today's episode, we're exploring the enriching and transformative topic of inner child healing work for older adults in couples therapy. Many assume that inner child healing work is only for younger individuals, but Nancy is here to debunk that myth and show us how powerful this work can be for adults. So, welcome to the show, Nancy. Welcome, welcome,
Okay.
welcome. Great to
Hi.
have you here today. Okay, this is awesome. I'm excited. Okay, to kind of jump into this topic today on inner child healing work with couples.
Yes.
Um, and many people think the inner child healing work is just for younger individuals or those who particularly experiencing some traumatic childhood experiences. Our inner child healing work can be a profound beneficial experience for people who are in couples. Could you kind of start telling us a little bit about that today? Uh, the first question is, how did you fall into this kind of specialized area of couples work?
Well, thanks for having me, Crystal. I'm happy to be here and I'm excited to share about how we help couples heal. I How I fell into working with couples in general. I came from a pretty chaotic, dysfunctional home, and when I went into graduate school, I took a family therapy course and fell in love with healing the family. So I launched into working with a lot of kids, adolescents, adults, individuals, but not really couples because I was pretty young at that stage. But what I ran into every single time I worked with a child or an adolescent was I would keep wanting to go back to working with the parents because the parents are the head of the family. And a child doesn't grow up in a vacuum. A child has a lot of influence coming from their parents or from others. And I realized that the couple in a family is the primary relationship. If you can work on healing the couple relationship, then the whole family is going to benefit. So I moved towards taking a lot of training in couples. I obviously got married. I also married a marriage and family therapist. So
Oh,
he and I,
wow.
yeah, he and I started with we just happened to take the John Gottman therapy training for therapists. That's when I don't know if you've heard of Gottman, but he's done a
I
lot of
definitely
research
have.
with
Hmm.
couples.
Hmm.
And we took a course with him like in 2001, right? Our first year of marriage. And it it really benefited our work, but it really benefited our marriage. And so that's kind of where I started with really honing my skills with doing couples work. And then I also realized as I work with individuals, adults, all ages, not just older, but all ages of adults, all of us have some wounding in our childhood that we are all spending our lives trying to recover from and learn from and heal from. And some of those Woundings are major traumas with a big T. Some of them are traumatic, just like our father didn't show up at our all of our sports events, because he had to work too much or he was an alcoholic or whatever it is. Those are small traumas, but they're still as we experience as a child, um, either the world feels unsafe or the caregivers that we have are not there for us or they're unsafe in general, and so we experience this wounding. And so it carries into all the work that I do,
Wow.
helping people do that inner child healing work. And
And
then,
so what I'm
yeah,
hearing you say, Nancy, this is amazing. So you met a man who you ended up dating, and he turns out
yes,
to be a therapist, right? This is
yes, yes,
amazing. And
yeah.
then, so this is so cool. So then you guys come together, and then you both find out that, hey, we want to do this training together. And so what then happens? Tell me what happened after you met, and give me the good details, Nancy.
Yeah, well, so Ken and I actually met at a marriage and family therapy training conference.
Okay, I get it. I
Yes,
get it.
that's where we
Okay.
actually met. We were both a few years out of graduate school, and he jokes, it took him about a year to get a date with me. Uh,
Wow,
just
amazing.
yeah, I just wasn't ready for something serious with him because I had some other relationships I was trying to, evaluate at that age. I was in my 20s.
Okay.
And then he and I met. We married like a year later, after we started dating, and we started launching our careers as, marriage and family therapists. And now we run a practice together. We have 3 children who our youngest is leaving the nest this fall.
Wow, wow, this is so
So
beautiful. So this
yeah.
has been going on for a while. So let's talk a little bit about, Nancy. Tell us a little bit about what the work and how your work has evolved. It sounds like you started out kind of
Mhm.
right where you are currently. But tell me what happened. What was the process, and how did you guys decide how you were going to develop this practice, and how you're going to treat patients and help people
Mm,
like you were
yeah.
by that intervention.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
couples work is in the early 2000s, it was really hard to find a couples therapist. A lot of individual therapists do individual work, but the field of marriage and family therapy, the licensure, was pretty new when I went through that training program.
Okay.
And so in the early 2000s, I started marketing myself to the community as a couples therapist.
Okay.
And so I just kept getting more and more couples to my practice. I see a lot of
Mm.
individuals, but that became something that I just kind of became more of a specialist in. I took Gottman's training. I took Sue Johnson's emotionally
Mhm.
focused therapy training.
Correct.
Uh, may God bless her soul. She recently passed away. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but
I didn't know that she
mhm.
passed away. I had no idea.
Yeah, she did
Oh,
this
I'm so
summer.
sorry.
Yes, yeah,
Wow. Well, it was very recent. Wow. And
right.
now you're doing the couples work. You have the relationship to boot.
Mhm,
You have
mhm,
the practice, the business. Things are starting to come out together for you.
yes.
Because this is trauma talks, and how did trauma treatment or inner child healing work kind of get in there? How did that start to weave itself into your
Sure.
practice?
Okay,
Mhm.
kind of to tie back into Sue Johnson, for a second, she's the pioneer in recognizing that adults bond in the same way that a child bonds to a mother or a
Okay.
father. So when a baby's born, there's that bonding process,
Mhm.
and based on whether that bond is a secure attachment, if their mother is healthy, their father is healthy, they're emotionally stable, and they're bonding to their child,
Yes.
and they provide this very secure environment,
Mhm.
that really determines how they're able to bond as adults. Um,
Awesome.
and so, if there's any trauma in that bonding process at any stage from 0 to 20, 0 to 40,
Mhm.
um, the adult lives with that belief either that other humans are safe to bond to, or I'm not sure if I can rely on this other human, and I'm not sure
Mm.
if I can trust them. And so that's where trauma comes in because most couples that end up in my office are in distress. They are in like an insecure, anxious attachment process with their partner.
Mhm.
Um, and my job is to start digging to find out, okay, how did this adult develop all of these defenses against intimacy? Um, and so usually those defenses
Yeah.
are at the root is their trauma.
Mhm.
Um,
So these are sort
and
of like imprints in what I'm hearing you say. So I saw the imprints into the person's life,
mhm.
and then they become, they, of course, they eventually get a long-term relationship. And then how do you believe that these childhood imprints or begin to manifest into relationships and things like that and become patterns and behaviors? How does that happen?
So um, I like to say that our wounded child has a protector.
Uh-huh.
And that protector is our adapted self, our adaptations.
Sure.
We learned how to survive, even though we were wounded. We learned how to protect ourselves, and it's like a superhero suit. Like we grow up in the world, and we all have our superhero suit. Either it's a Wonder Woman suit, Superman suit, Hulk, angry,
Yes.
um, or sometimes like very meek and afraid. Um, and so that those adaptations, when you go to bond with someone in
Right.
marriage or in a
Hmm.
relationship, that gets in the way.
Sure.
Um, you can't have sex with your clothes on,
Mm.
basically. So you can't have intimacy when you have all of these defenses blocking
Ah,
and protecting yourself from love and intimacy. And
there
so
you go.
yes.
Mhm.
And so when you start to bond with someone, you behave in ways like either you're waiting by the phone all the time. Is he texting me? Is he going to text me? Why hasn't he texted me? Maybe I should text him. What should I do? And you start having all of this anxiety.
Yes.
Um and so then your adapted self is either going to shrink and hide and just kind of wait and see if they reach out to see did they did they find me valuable? Am I worth them reaching out to me?
That
Um,
sounds like a Nancy, that sounds like an anxious attachment style.
yes,
Um,
very
because
much.
we're both therapists. So it sounds like the person the anxious attachment style that they had from childhood is now showing up in the way that they're perceiving this relationship or
Mhm.
how they're handling this relationship. So
Right,
they're just
right.
as anxious as they would be with their mom. Is
Mhm.
mom coming home? Or looking out the window. Is she coming home yet? Is she coming home yet? Or something
Yes.
like that.
Yes, yes.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes. And it's not just how they perceive the relationship, but it's also how they perceive themselves and their
Okay.
worth. Um, because if you've experienced trauma, you have messages inside of you that say, I'm either um, of no value to people, or
Okay.
I deserve all of this rejection because
Mhm,
I don't measure up.
mhm,
If you're not paid attention to as a child, you learn I'm not really that interesting.
mhm,
You
mhm.
learn that you don't have much value. Or
Right.
if you are used as a child for your parents to get their own needs met, whether
Mhm,
it's, through sexual abuse or um, through a mother who is overly enmeshed with their child and
right.
doesn't makes all the decisions for the child and micromanages the child because it helps the mother to feel more valued. Um,
I see.
And so you get
Wow.
all of these messages about yourself. And then you go into a relationship as an adult, adult to adult,
Yeah,
and you're looking for the other person all the time to tell you that you have value
that's right.
and to define your value instead of you've learned. And the inner child work is the goal is that you define your value. And
That's right. I love that. Okay, so
yeah.
how do you okay, so basically this is very crucial and for the person to begin to see that there's something took place in their younger childhood that
Mhm.
was causing them to behave or the way that they're behaving in relationships. And so
Yes.
how do you get a couple, particularly an older couple, to kind of see that? How do you
Yeah.
get them to
So
see that or really kind of,
drill
I would
down
say,
into
yeah,
it.
come into it, come
Mhm.
into that understanding, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So it starts with hearing their story when they come in. It starts with hearing tell me about what happens when you feel the most distress in your relationship.
Mm,
And so you have one person starting to tell a story of well, when this happens, when my husband, I come home from work and
mhm.
I go to say hi to my husband and he's like, stop, leave me alone, I'm stressed, I had a horrible day.
Yeah.
um and then and then my feelings are hurt,
Mhm, mhm.
and so I start behaving in certain ways, and so I
Yeah,
kind of track, okay, so what do you do then, how do you behave?
that's
um
great.
and the person's either gonna fight. They're gonna either keep, pushing
Mhm,
themselves on there, "What's wrong with you? Why are you being mean?" They're
yeah.
gonna try to start something,
Mhm.
um, or they're gonna back away, flight, they're gonna
Yeah.
flee, and they're gonna feel
Awesome.
hurt and
Mhm, mhm,
sad,
mhm.
or stew in their anger.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes they freeze. There's the freeze response people get of like, "Wow, what's happening here? I don't even know what happened here. What is going
Wow.
on? I don't know how to respond here." Um,
I
and
hear
so
what you're saying, and
yeah,
that's very fascinating that how the trauma, you said trauma response is the fight, flight, or freeze mode response,
mhm,
and so are you at this point with the person really kinda helping them, of course, unpack it? It sounds like they're
yes,
unpacking it, you're kinda helping them to unpack it. This is great.
yes,
This it's coming from them so they understand the story is actually coming alive again to them. Even
mhm,
it's coming to you for the first time. But for them, it's kind of like being clear, becoming more clear for the
yes,
person who's telling the story. And then
yes,
on top of that, what it's wonderful. That's why I think that's so fascinating to be able to help people get clarity like that. And then the second thing that it sounds like you're doing is as they're telling you the story, you're injecting into the story the new understandings or new knowledge or new footprints or something so that
yeah,
they can kind of follow, so you're kind of weaving that into the conversation so that the person can see, okay, that's kind of, oh, that's what that means, or the little psychoeducation, or that's what that's about, or oh, or is this about this, or maybe even asking questions to get even more clarity to help them even further um unpack it
yes,
even in
correct,
more
yeah,
depth. Okay,
yes,
great.
yes.
Wow. So anyway, so you so share those are some of the comments. So those are some of the ways in which you're starting out. What do you do next?
Um, Another piece of that beginning phase is really validating. Like, well,
Okay,
yes,
that's right.
yes, you're protecting yourself. I mean, either this protection is either you're gonna go fight and get what you want because
Yeah,
what's going on is that wounded child is feeling hurt, neglected, wants love, wants validation. So yes, you're gonna go fight for yourself, and that's why
s-
you get angry, and that's why you go and make some comments to get him engaged or get her
mhm,
engaged.
that's right.
Um, so you validate their reaction. You say, "That, of course, makes sense because of your
Makes a lot of
experience.
sense.
I understand why you're doing that."
Yeah,
And then the next phase of all of that, once you validate it and let them realize, like, help them see the connection
yes,
between why they're doing what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
um, then I start to help them realize, like, "But it's not working, is it?" It
Mm.
it doesn't draw, and this is where I turn to the partner and say,
Sure.
when she yells at you like that or starts coming after you to get those dishes done because she's overwhelmed in the kitchen and she's got to go
Mm-hmm.
take care of those kids and she's kind of
Mm-hmm.
yap, 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 yelling at you, nagging, does that make you draw close to her? Is that working? Is that pattern of her coming at you like that? Is that working?
Sure.
And then of course the answer is probably no. It makes me want to like either say, get the heck away from me, or I kind of disappear into my world,
Sure.
or I do it and I'm resentful.
Mm-hmm.
So I help them recognize, like, okay, so it's a losing strategy. The
Mm-hmm.
way
Mm-hmm.
our protected self wants to
Sure.
protect us, it
Yes.
it a lot of times gets in the way of intimacy and really
Ah, so
getting
sure at that point you're psychoeducating them, of course, about their trauma response, helping them with clarify what the story is and also what the trauma response is. And then
yeah.
the next thing you're doing, of course, you're validating them because you have to make sure you validate it. And even if you don't validate everything, you may validate specific parts of the story that
Mhm.
are gonna help them to try to move through this and then, and not get stuck. You don't wanna validate parts of the story that keep people stuck. You wanna
Yes.
try and validate parts of the story that help people to move through the continuum in this process towards healing. And then but then allowing them there's so much beautiful beauty going on here because I can just see so much happening. So, here they are coming into clarity like, "Oh, yeah, I do that. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that was" so the very thing that I'm complaining about, that I'm coming into couples therapy complaining about and saying that I'm not getting the intimacy, the thing that I'm doing, my trauma response is actually impeding me from getting my
Yeah.
my
Mhm. Mhm.
intimacy that I really, really want from this relationship.
Right. Right.
Yes, deep
Yes.
intimacy. Yes.
Mhm.
Very
Mhm.
good. Very good. Wow,
Mhm.
fascinating.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so let's continue. So what do you think? What should come next, or what does come next?
Um, so kind of helping, like, a lot of times people, therapists struggle with engaging clients at that stage of like helping them find the leverage to do the work
Mhm.
that they need to do to change.
Right.
Um, so what's the motivation for a man per se to change his anger patterns,
Mhm.
he's like, this is how I am. I just
Yes.
like fly off the handle for 30 seconds or 5 minutes, and
Mhm.
after I've flown off the handle, I've punched the wall and I'm over it.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Mhm, mhm. So this is so you're mitigating, that sounds like what you just said, just we were talking kind of lightly talking about the female when we were first just talking, and now
Yeah.
we're on the male, and so now how are you engaging the male? Say that again? That
Yeah.
was great.
So you start looking for how you're gonna get leverage with the male client to change. Like, what's gonna help him change? And
Yes.
and I have to tell you, I don't know if you've heard of Terry Real, but I have learned so much from him in this area.
This is fascinating. I don't know about Terry Real, but this is great. You
Yeah,
can teach me about it a little bit.
he's done
Mhm.
so much work with men, and now he's applied it in his couples work, but the main, lesson that I've learned is you have to find the leverage with the male, especially an
Awesome.
angry male or an angry female, because boy, I've had when you get an angry female in your office, she can be a little bit scary, you know? And you have to help, like, either one de-escalate
Sure.
under the anger and say, "You have to realize when your quills are out, or when you have that Hulk suit on and you're"
Mhm.
you know, "I understand why you have it on, number 1.
Right.
It's helped you
Mhm.
survive. It's helped you be successful in the world, in the business
Yes.
world, or
Okay.
whatever, it's helped you. But in it to get your wife in the bedroom and take off her clothes and have mad passionate sex with you and really let down her guard and let you, just really do your thing with her, what do you think that's gonna take? Is that what you want first and most
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're gonna tell
that's
me
awesome.
that.
This is incredibly powerful what you're saying. This is
Yes,
it.
they're gonna be like, "I want that." Yes, how do I get my woman to just let down her guard and be free with
Mhm,
me
mhm.
and play with
Wow.
me? And and the way it works is I'm like, because you have to let your guard down in day-to-day interactions. You cannot be that mean, ugly Hulk
Can give you a thumbs
when
up to that one, yes.
yeah, at 4 PM in the afternoon when everybody's kind of driving you crazy and then want that crazy passionate sex at 9 o'clock at night. Your wife is not gonna want that. She's gonna be as soon as you put that Hulk suit on and you get ugly and mean and hit the wall and you let out all that, anger, your wife, that scares your wife. It just
Safety went right out the
does.
door,
Yeah.
right? Has the safety totally went out the door. She's
Yeah,
not
and
feeling
she
safe at
puts her
that point.
superhero suit on, and
Oh,
now you
absolutely.
guys are in this battle, you know? She's like,
Ah.
"Oh, okay, you wanna do that with me? I'm gonna start fighting you back," and
Mhm.
she's either gonna put her superhero suit on that's gonna fight you, or she's gonna disappear. She's
I
going into
love that. I know
invisible
that
woman.
analogy, the superhero. I love that, Nancy, because
Yeah.
it's so true. Exactly what it is. It's like
Yes.
the superhero suit is funny. It's true.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is exactly how it plays out.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do you address this resistance and the discomfort now that is? It seems like the
And
discomfort and the resistance is building.
yeah. So I slow it down with the couples. I first let them like just, you know, um kind of just reflect on what do you think about what I'm saying,
Right.
like and then I start helping them think about so have there been times you've gotten that with your wife? And how did
Mhm.
you get that? And have there been times you've gotten what you needed from your husband? And how did you
Sure.
get that? And then, if the more resistance you get or a couple keeps coming into my office week after week
Mhm.
and there's not much change,
Mhm.
then I know, okay, there's a lot more wounding underneath that's keeping their defenses in place.
Ah.
And that's when we really start digging a little more into family of origin work, their childhood,
Yeah,
who
the inner
treated,
child. Let's talk about that. Okay, so
yeah.
now you come in, you gotten the basic story, you kind of helped them hopefully maybe move some of the resistance and discomfort that they're having so that they can, go home in one piece. And so from here, uh how do you then get them once you realize that this is going to be an inner child healing work thing? This is going to be one of those cases where we're going to have to do some. How do you move from that beginning phases of the treatment to this next phase?
Um, a kind of a simple question. Who did this to you?
Ooh,
Who
ooh,
treated you like this?
ooh.
Or, where did
That
you
would hit me.
learn?
That would hit me,
Yeah.
Nancy. Oh, yeah, that would
Yeah.
hit me.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
then how do big people typically respond to that?
They pause and they start thinking and they might be like, "What do you mean? Who did this to me?" And at first they're not quite sure that I'm asking them to go into their family of origin work or their childhood. A lot of times they'll start like saying, "He did it to me" or "She did it to me."
Mhm, mhm, of
Yes, yes.
course.
I believe that's happened. That's why you guys are here. I believe that I see that pattern. Yes.
Not done.
But how did you learn to defend yourself the way you defend yourself?
That's right.
Who taught you either to put that invisible cloak on and
Okay.
go hide,
Uh-huh.
um, or who taught you to get big and ugly and be the Hulk and you know go at people? Tell me about someone your in your family life. Like who was that person that was doing that in your life? Or
Love it.
tell me about your parents' marriage.
Sure.
What'd you see in their marriage? How
Mhm.
did they behave? What was their intimacy like in terms of
Yes.
expressing love and connection? Um, who
And
taught
then
who taught you love and
he taught
connection?
you, and then yeah, I mean, yeah, my daddy taught me blah blah blah, and then then what do you
Mhm.
do then? When they say that once they at that point now they're kind of like the cat kind of got their tongue and probably at one point they're like, what who did this to me? And then they're kind of like, okay, I do realize the did to me. Actually, I'm sorry, it's coming back to me. I'm realizing who did this to me. Or they might know right away who did it to them,
Mhm,
depending on the
mhm.
person.
Right, right.
And so they're acknowledging things. They're standing up to the challenge. You've just put them up to a challenge.
Yeah,
So now
yeah,
they have to kind of shift their energy from this person that's sitting next to them. They're being challenged to actually go back into their childhood.
yeah.
Um, it is very uncomfortable, I'm pretty sure, to do
Mhm,
that. You know what I mean? But you're encouraging them. You're helping
mhm.
them with the open communication, and how do you, because this is crucial what you're doing here. How do you now get them to see, you know what, we're gonna need to do any child human. How do you kind of transition that process?
Um, I'm like, well, I'll kind of just sit. I'll slow down. I slow my process down, and I'll like
Okay.
just sit with what's coming to mind for you as we talk.
Right.
What are you thinking about? How are you feeling? Tell me about what's going on inside of you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get a message that the room is still unsafe, and
Really.
what I mean by that is they'll either kind of be like, I already did all this work, I've been in
Mm-hmm.
therapy for years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, I'm afraid if I share all this, she's just my husband or my wife, whoever's sitting there with them, they're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
use this later. That she
Mm-hmm.
tells me all the time I'm just like my father or I'm just like my
Right.
mother.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, sure. And so I'll validate, make sure
Mm-hmm.
I can shore up safety,
Go.
make sure they understand, it's all in it's all in the name of their goal. All the work
Okay.
that I'm working on is,
Okay.
I know you might have done this work in the past, but I'm picking up on it's playing out in your life in a different way now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
way that you didn't work on before, and that's
Mm-hmm.
now it's playing out with your wife, with your kids.
Okay, and I
Um,
love that it's showing it's playing out in your life in a different way, because
mhm.
sometimes it does things do play out in our life in one way, so maybe
Oh,
it's playing
yes.
out at work,
Yep.
and it's mostly playing out at work, it's where we're seeing the most impact, and then sometimes it switches, and the trauma switches and starts to play out in a different area of the person's life,
Yes.
like the relationship, maybe they weren't in a relationship before, so there was no way for it to play out in
Right.
a relationship.
Right.
Wow, that's
And
pretty
and
amazing,
yeah,
Nancy.
and especially with couples, like, with older couples who've been
Sure.
married 20 plus years or
Mhm.
even 10 plus years,
Yeah.
you have
How does that fold into this,
yeah.
Nancy?
So you have all of these patterns with each other, these
Okay.
emotional ingrained patterns that have been reoccurring, occurring over and over and over in their marriage for years. And
Okay. Right.
John Gottman says we have one fight. And
Okay.
we have the same fight about thousands of different issues that come to
I
play.
love that.
The fight in my marriage is my husband feels I can be dismissive, and I feel he's, doesn't open up and hear and accept my influence.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
and so it shows up over and over.
Over and over again.
He might say, "Ah, let me think of a good example." "Hey, I'm really worried about,
Mhm.
um, our daughter and her relationship with her boyfriend. They're going off to college. I'm really concerned that this is really gonna blow up when they go to college because 'cause they're going to 2
Right.
separate colleges."
Uh-huh.
And I respond with, "Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, they have a good marriage or a good relationship. I think they're
Mhm.
both confident. I think they'll be okay."
Yeah.
And he right away feels, like, dismissed. His worry is dismissed.
Mm.
I'm not taking it in. I'm not saying, "You know, I see your point. I understand why you're saying that. Say more."
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But for us,
Mm.
I don't say more sometimes because I think he can go down the negative track too far.
Yeah, man.
And
Yeah.
then I'm like he starts projecting 10 years out into the future, and
Yeah.
I'm so I get
So you're scared of those
overwhelmed.
cognitive you're scared of those cognitive,
Yes, and I get overwhelmed, so I
distortions or
start to
stuff.
kind of, like,
Oh, that's very overwhelming,
shut
yeah.
him down, and then I have an opinion of like, "But honey, look at this, think of these things." And then
Yes.
he shuts me down because he thinks, "Well, you weren't listening to what I was saying, so I'm gonna
Mhm.
dismiss what you're saying." And then I
Okay.
don't feel like my influence is accepted, and
Mhm,
we're off
mhm.
to the races at that point.
Absolutely. That is such a good scenario, what you just said. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And so then how do we steer them to do this inner child healing work? Because this isn't something that a lot of the times when people are older, particularly the older couples, which is what we're talking about today, they're not necessarily for this, not necessarily
Yeah, and they're very focused on each other. So you kind of have to hold like the current dynamic of yes, your partner continues to do these things and is hurting you over and over and
yes,
over.
yes, yes,
I
yes.
hear that. But can you be patient and let me dig a little bit into where your partner learned these protective mechanisms.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
can you sit quietly for a bit? And sometimes in
Sure.
my sessions, I'll work with when it's a couples session, I might work with
Sure.
one person for 45 minutes for the majority of the time because and I'll keep checking in with the other partner and say, "Is this
Mhm,
okay
mhm.
with you that I'm going here with your partner?"
Right,
That
right.
I'm spending time going a little bit deeper because
That's
I
right.
will be doing that with you in our next session or in the very near future. We're gonna do this with kind of your woundedness.
Yeah, so
Um
you'll be the other partner will be looking on looking or
Mhm,
whatever, and then you'll
mhm,
switch to one partner and you'll
mhm,
kind of start the inner work. And so
mhm.
what is the thing that you do to kind of get that
So
whole
I'll say,
thing
so
moving?
take me back. Take me back to your
Okay, okay, okay.
childhood. Take
Mhm.
me back
Mhm.
to that little boy, who first experienced that their father wasn't there for them. Who first
Mm.
said, "Daddy, let's go play baseball," or "Daddy, will you throw me the football?" or "Daddy, Daddy."
I love that. I love that. Wow,
Take me back to
that's a
that.
beautiful way to transition that. And
Yeah,
it's not it doesn't even feel negative. It just feels almost like, okay, we're gonna go into this story. And then as you go into the story, then the story does what the story does. And
yeah.
um so that's kind of how you're beginning the process of the, the inner child healing work, but with the couple, because
Yes,
there's two people in the room. And
yes.
so give me an example of are there any exercises that starts to play? What if they bring up something that's horrendous that
Mm,
happened that they didn't
mhm,
even, mention to their husband or
mhm.
anyone about?
Um I try to go very slow. I
Okay.
when I start to see something's like really strong, powerful coming up inside of
Emotions
them.
coming up? Yeah.
Yes. I will just go real slow and I'll say, um in this moment, I can see you're starting to encounter some of that pain
Okay.
again.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Um is it okay if we go a bit further, or would at any point you can tell me, "Hey, this is too much. I
Sure.
want to stop here."
Mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm.
is there anything sometimes I'll say, "Is it okay if your partner moves a little closer to you here?"
Mhm,
On the
mhm,
couch, like moves closer and maybe
mhm.
hold your hand, or
Sure.
some people will say, "No, I don't want to
Mhm,
be touched. I When I
mhm,
get in this space, it
mhm,
I just wanna just be on my own for a bit, and that's
mhm,
okay
mhm.
too.
Sure.
So we slow it down.
Right.
So that's in session.
Okay.
So out of session, I really encourage people to journal a little bit, try to take 20 minutes between our 2 session the next session.
Right.
Can you can you just sit and with yourself and just start writing a little bit of
Yes.
things that have come up with for you in our
Mhm.
meetings
Right.
together
Right.
about this event.
Mhm.
Depending how tragic it is or traumatizing, I might recommend individual therapy for them,
Mhm.
um, and get them shored up with an individual therapist,
Mhm. Mhm.
and we'll work together on kind of helping strengthen
Mhm.
that work that they're doing. I let them know, "Hey, that's so courageous that you brought that up. Um,
Sure.
I'm here with you. Your partner and I are here with you as you remember some of this.
Mhm.
Take your time with it. Things like that. Just lots of
Those are
reassuring.
very good empathy statements, and, those are some of the statements that I use in my book, Deep Inner Soul: Healing with Self-Empathy.
Mm-hmm.
To take your time, I'm here with you, take your time, those kinds of statements, and I like the way that you create first of all, you created a safe space to start with in the
Yeah.
very beginning of this process. I noticed that you created a safe space for both partners to explore their paths and things like that. And then you guided them through these exercises and things like that to this discussion to help them connect with the inner child and things like that and connect with the story and then the journaling, like you said, and that they're doing. Do you do any role playing or is role play what
Sometimes.
part does role play involved? Does it
Yes.
okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes I might role play one of them, one of the
Mm-hmm.
partners, and let the other one role
Mm-hmm.
play off of me, or
Sure.
I might script a few things, have them do, with emotionally focused therapy, there's a lot of training around creating um, repair interactions. I'm not thinking of the right word, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
enactments that,
Enactments. I was gonna say visualization, enactments, yeah,
yeah,
those
that
kinds of things.
Yeah,
Mhm,
create a sense of, like, their partner gets them a little bit.
mhm.
So I might
That's right.
yeah, I might say to the partner that's been listening, I might say, "Can you just share with your partner what that was like to watch them do this work? What"
Yeah, that's great because
Yeah,
of that feedback is very
"how
important.
that felt, seeing
Mhm,
them really explore this part of themselves." Um, and their partner might they might do a good job there, or they might go up into their head and put their
mhm.
thoughts instead of their emotions into it. So I'll
Sure.
just say, okay, but take your mind out of it for a minute. Just tell me what your heart was saying
There you go.
when you
So you're
saw
constantly teaching them how to go in, how to check in with themselves, how to see where
have
they
more,
are,
yeah,
and then you're
and
also
reflect
find out
empathy.
where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, mhm.
Yes, and reflect empathy to each other because
Reflect empathy to each other,
yeah,
and
with
you're reflecting
couples,
empathy
yeah.
to them, of
Yes.
course, so you're
Yeah.
modeling that, so
Yes.
that's really great, and so you're helping them to understand their partners, that you're fostering that understanding, that's showing them how you're understanding towards their partner, even when they say things that about the childhood trauma that you're, you know going
Exploring.
through.
Mhm. Mhm.
Remember, you guys, this is awesome show. We have to make sure we like, share, and subscribe. I honestly didn't even want to stop and say anything because this is so good, and I want you to make sure you get this information. You're able to get more content like this, so make sure you do that. And so, Nancy, this is awesome. So you're giving me some examples. We're starting to really get into the nitty gritty of this thing and how it really plays out and how you're really helping them through this process, how you're owning actually both of their hands, through this
Mhm. Mhm.
powerful exercise. Have you ever heard of the exercise called the time machine exercise? Where
Mm,
each
go ahead.
partner takes turns in sharing childhood memories, the significant memories that they might have that impacted them both, and that impacted them negatively, and sort of it's kind of like they call it the time machine, and so
Yeah.
anyway, so they go back and they kind of go back and helping each other, and I think that's kind of sort of what it sounds like you're doing, but just without that label on it, and the
Yes.
other partner kind of listens attentively to them, and that's sort of a great role play type thing that they could do in right there in it, so that they can kind of like start to begin to practice this, so that when something comes up again, they have a knee-jerk reaction that they
Mhm.
go back to, you know what I mean? Once they
Yeah.
leave the session and they kind of
Yeah.
go back to, oh yeah, generally when you say this one word, I'm like, totally
Mhm,
triggered.
mhm,
I'm not aware. Now, hopefully now after the session, they're starting to be a little bit more aware of why these certain things are bothering them
mhm,
the way that they are. But
mhm.
then as they begin to notice that this is okay, this is what bothers me. When you say, I'm, getting on your nerves, or when you say that, when you kind of demoralize me, or when you kind of like put me down, or when you kind of like your voice tone goes up, or whatever the thing is, that there's a triggering kind of statement or attitude
Right.
that the other person just sees being displayed. And then that awareness now, oh, okay, my dad did kind of used to act like that towards me. He was really like, he was very dismissive. Okay, and that's why that dismissiveness just really, it just brings some pain up in me, and anger up in me. And now they come out of that session with that tool. Now that they know that, okay, this isn't just coming from him. That's why it's so painful, because this is something that I've endured for 20, 30 years, which I've
Yes.
forgotten all about. I went through this before already. And so now they're coming to the point where you gave them those tools. Now they know what that's all about. And they see that come up, and then they know that this is deep, deep, deep trauma. And is there some exercises that they can do once they start to get back to their home, that they can do, that they can actually start to work on those wounds, because those wounds are there. And when you're doing the inner child healing work, you're essentially dealing with wounds, right?
Yeah, yes. And so one thing, the beginning phase, I have people track the triggering
Hmm.
events.
Oh, I like that. Hmm.
Yeah, so on their phones, I'll just say when something comes up, um, or have either you can record it on your phone or have a little journal in your kitchen or something, but just write it down. Just write down the event. She said
Sure.
this and I felt this whoosh of anger over me, or this extreme frustration, and I have them kind
Hmm.
of begin to really track the triggers, because underneath all of this is physiology, and that's something else
Yeah.
I teach my clients, and we've learned so much about in the past many years of how emotion, where it's stored in our brains, it's
Mhm.
stored in the amygdala. The amygdala has no thought, so you can have the same emotion to a small event as you had to a huge event,
Absolutely.
but your emotions are a physiological event. And
Sure.
so I start in with the triggers, doing lists of triggers. Then we start to think about, tell me about the emotions, the physiological response that you're having when this
Responses.
happens.
Yes. Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and that usually starts showing up in the office as well. When couples are doing more work, they get
Hmm.
more real with you. They start reacting more real with each other, and you can
Hmm.
see the
Hmm.
physiological reactions they're having to each
Okay.
other. And so I teach them to notice that. Like,
Wow,
"Ooh,
that's good.
what just happened
Nice.
there?" Pause for a moment. I pause for
So they're not
emotion.
just listening to the words anymore. So
Mm-mm.
they're tracking two things now. They're tracking physiological
Mhm.
responses,
Mhm.
which we know are from the amygdala, the
Right.
fear center part of the brain. You guys take the note of that. Okay, it's
Mm.
the amygdala is the fear center part of the brain where all that stuff is stored,
Yeah.
and and then they're tracking the physiological and the verbal.
Yes. Yes.
Because
Yes.
before they were just tracking the verbal, but they weren't really tracking the physiological, and they weren't
Yeah.
realizing that, oh, this is,
Mhm.
she was kind of, I could kind of see in her face, or he or she's face, before they started to even get into exacerbation and the conversation was out of hand. I
Mhm.
could see the physiological responses even before the verbal responses.
Yes, yes. We do see that. And that's, I mean, we can see a very micro movement in our partner's face.
Thank you.
That will tell us, like, uh-oh, danger is coming, like their
Mhm.
mood just changed. And so all of a sudden they're going to be upset with us, you
Right, and
know.
it's good if you're teaching them to track that. That's really good, because sometimes, because if you track something like that, you likely could stop some of this stuff before it gets
Yes.
really, really out of
Yeah.
hand. It's okay. Let's stop. Okay, I see you're getting really upset. I'm sorry. Let me just stop with you for a minute.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
wait, because a lot of times we don't really know that we're pushing the buttons like we're pushing them. Maybe
Mhm.
sometimes we know, but
Mhm.
not all the time. Sometimes we don't even know we're pushing someone's buttons until the buttons are pushed. And
Yes.
the response, and we're like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that was that upsetting to you. And, we
Mhm.
had no idea. But
Mhm.
if you're teaching a person how to track the physiological responses to the facial movements and different things and pay attention to other people, that's huge. That's like, wow. I'm like, I love that because
Yeah.
now the person is likely gonna catch what they're doing, if they don't catch the words, because sometimes people are different the way that they talk, and they may not actually say something that is allowing you to see what they're really dealing with or
Right.
what they're really feeling.
Right.
you know, this is so good. This is so good. Oh my goodness. Nancy, wow. Wow. So
Yeah.
yeah, what else do we need to go ahead and wrap up now? I assume we need to wrap up now. We're running out of time. But is there anything that you can leave with the listener out there that you think will be useful for them to really kind of get on this journey of couples in
Sure.
their childhood where honestly we're American men. Every couple do it. I
Yeah.
don't care if you're having problems or if you're not having problems because
Yes.
hey, that's what this is like. You guys, the problems at some point.
Yes. Yes.
you know, but
Yeah, we
what they
don't get
call the honeymoon phase will eventually.
it does end. And how you navigate those first few years of marriage really matter because you're either going to create more attachment injury or
uh,
create security and safety, for a
short.
lifelong successful marriage. Most people come into counseling 5 years too late, meaning like they've spent 5 years in this entangled,
Um, uh,
hurtful conflict that they have not
mm,
worked through, and
to-
they've developed all of these entrenched patterns. And
and resentments and
yes,
anger,
yep,
and they're like ready to like
yep,
hang up the coat. You know what I mean? In the
yep.
hat all at once. Wow. Thank you so much, Nancy. Wow. So, you know, so you just say get in as quick as possible, huh, Nancy?
Yeah, get in
Get
soon.
in.
Yeah.
Probably what would be your recommendation for them to
I
do? Start
even
like
I mean, a couple who's getting ready to get married, I would go into some counseling together just
go
to
right
kind
in.
of unite around what your values are and how you want to begin your journey together, like define it.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and then the therapist should teach you like what to watch out for. When should we get back into counseling? What are some of the
But this should be
patterns?
an ongoing thing, not just at the beginning, like you
Yes.
said, but I didn't think about that. But yeah, you're gonna start it that way, and then
Mhm.
at some
Mhm.
point, you're gonna when you see certain things, kind of let you know if you see this going on, you probably need to come back
Yeah.
because people
Yeah.
should be going in and out. Oh
Yeah. I feel like
goodness.
we're like general doctors, like we're here when you need us, and when you start to get stuck and you can't
People
work
need to see
through.
mental health like that,
Yeah.
Nancy. They need to
Mhm.
see mental health the same as they
Yes.
see physical health. Hello.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why we do this show because we want them to begin to see mental health the same as they see physical health.
Yeah.
So, well, I better wrap this up today. So, thank you, Nancy, for
Thank
coming on the
you.
show. Thank you so much for sharing this insight and this expertise today. We really, really needed this. You deserve like medals for this. You've been doing this so long. You're like the real McCoy. You're the real McCoy. So I really appreciate that. So thank you, listeners, for joining us on Trauma Talks with Krystal Boothe. We enjoyed you today, joining us in this episode. Please like, share, subscribe to this podcast. Okay, and remember, it's not what happens to you, but it's who you decide to become.